for you. So if we stimulate a thought that you have, or if we kind of elicit a feeling that you may want to express, raise your hand. We'll bring a microphone out to you. The only thing we ask is when you stand up, just give us your name so that we can kind of capture that. And let's get the conversation going pretty quickly. Now, for everyone here, how many of you are here for the first time? Ha ha ha, this is fantastic. How many of you are in the building for the first time? You haven't even been in the building before. Excellent. For welcome. This is the Design and Innovation Building here at UCSD. It was designed as a portal into all things entrepreneurship innovation across the campus. We of course, create entrepreneurship here at UCSD to have several kind of on-ramps and off-ramps, ways to engage with us and get involved. And this is just one of them. We host these events to not only socialize interesting things that we're working on, but also to kind of to have conversations about topics that we think not only you will find interesting, but we would actually learn from hearing from you about in terms of how these things develop. We call it innovation at the edge, is because this is not meant to be a big historical retrospective on kind of what happened 100 years ago, but more importantly, what's happening right now and what's changing our lives in the moment. And then how are we going to kind of deal with this stuff, particularly if there's a lot of uncertainty and ambiguity, if things are not well defined. So that's why we really need your input and activity. I think we've got some slides later on, but to learn more about what we do here at UCSD and innovation, go to innovation.ucsd.edu. This is the Design and Innovation Building, and so it has its own website as well. But we're an open platform here. We invite you to come and explore what's going on. If you have questions about how to get involved, we can do it. There's multiple ways to kind of play and engage with us. Just one of them, Joe and Trisha and Ari are going to kind of tell you about some of the things we're doing here. And without hesitating any longer, since you're going to really want to hear from them, I'm going to turn it over to Joe to get started.
Hi. How's the tech going? Can you turn next slide? Yeah, hi. So I'm Joe and this is Ari. We'll get more into that. Next slide. So am I coming through all right? Yeah. All right, cool. So hi, I really want to start off with why I'm here and where I'm from. I am from upstairs in this land called MAVERiC. Which is the Mixed Augmented Virtual Extended Reality Innovation Center. That's okay, just call us Mavericks. That's a bunch of people. How many Mavericks I have in the room tonight? Yeah, so they're surrounded by them. So we're the people that build these things, that use mixed augmented virtual reality. Next slide. You can see some of the stuff in here. And actually, even one of these pictures over here behind me is actually of a bunch of time travelers from production that we held right here about this time last year with the La Jolla Playhouse. So you're not the first time travelers to enter this room. It's actually a bit of a theme around here, and I'm a bit of a recurring character. We build all sorts of worlds to travel to. So in addition to tonight's time travel experience, come back for more and get to know a Maverick. We'll take you to a world you've never seen before. And then me. Hi. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Joe Unger. I'm also known as TilT out there in the wilds of the metaverse. I've been building virtual worlds since it was fashionable to do so with dice and paper back around lakes in places like Wisconsin with games called Dungeons and Dragons. And you'll see me here around the campus today still doing similar silly things. So what I'm really known for is actually the stuff you see behind you here, which is actually building virtual fantasy worlds. So using all of this technology that we can to visualize what's around us, to take us to places we've never gone before. And most of that, for me, in the time travel side, has been the mythic past. I actually started off as an archaeologist and worked as a commercial archaeologist, where I built museum displays using everything you can to take a person back in time. As even what we call an interpreter out in the public park system where I played a guy called George Catlin, and would take you back 150 years to paint the prairie. We're at the Buffalo. So I've always been a little 1 foot in the past, and as I got to know games, it was really about swinging swords and fighting dragons. So it's always been anchored in this mythic past. But as you can see too, I've done some weird stuff, some mythic pasts that here. This was a social game that had 140 million daily active users on Facebook. It's a lot of people playing a fantasy 1920s roller coaster park. And then over here is a brand called Borderlands, which I know it doesn't seem like fantasy. That seems maybe a more science fiction, but actually from making it, it is a fantasy gun universe that has nothing to do with reality or this planet at all. It is a wild time in a world full of psychopaths. So I hope it's not the reality that we make today and that it is a fantasy difference. So that actually bleeds into alternate realities. How many here know the franchise Halo? You guys, this is a vast video game franchise, been around for a couple of decades. How many know I Love Bees? Huh? Nobody. Okay. So things that did not last the test of time but are fashionable once again. So these are a whole thing that we used to call ARGs. Now people think more augmented reality games, but at the time it was alternate reality games. How do you work and nest 300 websites across this and thread a story through those websites that tie into live performance, as well as a movie release, as well as a video game release, and a toy release on top of it? And that was I Love Bees. It was one singular story that you had to experience through toys, games, advertising, media, random obscure websites that you had to ask your friends about, and wild goose chases out there in reality when you got the chance to witness a flash mob. It's kind of a weird moment in time, but that kind of brings us to now in this moment of weirdness, which is my last stop along our travel along the past, which brings us to Ari, which is the next slide. So this is the earth-shattering moment. So Ari and I talked a lot in preparing for this about this moment here. Has anybody seen this advertisement? All right, okay. So this was the Super Bowl advertisement in 1984 for Apple. So it went to the 1984 book, right, where they're burning books and there was doublespeak and stuff. And it had this revolutionary person holding a sledgehammer come and smash the television and all the PCs around them to usher in the new world of Apple in 1984. And now we sit at the precipice of the future where this science fiction work inspired a guy named Steve Jobs to have a different vision of the world. And I thought that that was the right way to set up Ari and the work you're doing. So Ari, can you introduce what you do and who you are as a futurist in science fiction?
I would love to. Thank you, Joe. Hi, everyone. Thank you for coming. I'm Ari Popper. I am the founder and CEO of a company called SciFutures, which is my own innovation consultancy that I've been doing for over a decade. And I'm also excited to announce that I am the resident futurist here with the MAVERiC studio and Joe and Trish and Greg. So this is my official coming out party. But yes, I work in the future. My business is about the future. How did I get into this crazy business? Well, I've always been a huge science fiction fan. I would imagine that if you're here today, you probably are a sci-fi fan. Like, no one's coming out if they don't like sci-fi. But what I noticed when I read science fiction, because I primarily read it as a teenager, was that it pulled me into another world. And there was that suspension of disbelief. And that is a powerful force. That's a force that we can harness and use, and we do, and I'll tell you how we use it. But that pulling you into that world, that suspension of disbelief, that pulling you into whatever universe you've bought into is a device. It's a business tool. Believe it or not, it's a business tool. And when I was a young kid, I was somebody who was a big Star Wars fan. I was a huge Star Wars fan. And the Star Wars universe left a huge impression on me. Those inventions, holograms and lightsabers and all that technology in that world just seemed like something I wanted to do, I wanted to build. But anyway, fast forward to where I am today. I used to run a big research company, and I wanted to do something different, and I honestly didn't know what I wanted to do. So I thought, well, I love sci-fi, I'm going to go write science fiction. So I went to UCLA, and I signed up for a creative writing class, and I started writing sci-fi. And one day, I had this huge epiphany. I was like, well, we could use this for business, couldn't we? So I went home and I said to my wife, ex-wife, I said, this is a great idea. I'm going to start a company that does this. So I'm 14 years into it. We work with amazing companies. You might have heard of them, brands like Coca-Cola and L'Oreal. We work with the military. And what I'm excited to share with you today is my learning, what I've learned over the last 13, 14 years of using science fiction as a world-building tool, how to use it in the commercial world, what are the differences between using it as an entertainment device and as an actual business tool, and we'll show you some case studies. But mostly I'm interested in hearing from you. Like, what do you guys think about it? What's inspiring you in the sci-fi world? And as Joe was saying, this is a weird time. So we need good stories right now. We need good visions of the future. So I'm really interested in hearing from you guys as well.
So we brought up a example that you and I had talked about before that comes right into that mutual inspiration, right? Yeah. Like, I grew up on Next Generation. The holodeck is something that I've strived to build every day, upstairs. And at CES, we kind of saw a version of that too. And you've kind of been working on holodecks for quite some time, it seems.
I have, yeah. I always wanted to build a holodeck too. And then I found back in 2013, I was hired by Lowe's. Lowe's, the home improvement. They were one of my very first clients. Pepsi was my first, Lowe's was my second. And they said to me, what's the future of home improvement? How are people going to renovate homes in the future? Now, this is when Oculus Rift was on Kickstarter still. So VR was still a twinkle in the eye, really. And we took all Lowe's research. So it was, well, what do people go through when they renovate? Has anyone done a renovation, a home renovation? Yeah, it's not fun. It's traumatic. I actually found out there's therapists that specialize in helping couples work through their issues as they're renovating their kitchen. But what Lowe's told us is there's about $1 billion of lost money because people are afraid of renovations. And the pain point, as we know if you study marketing and market research, the consumer insight, which is the pain point, is that they can't visualize a completed project. They also don't have the language to communicate with each other. So if the one partner says, I want country kitchen, you might imagine it as classic modern or whatever the case is. All right. So we realized that visualization, bringing your home to life in a virtual world or digital world, would solve a lot of the pain points that people have before they renovate. So we went out and we wrote some science fiction stories. And this is actually one of the very first stories my company wrote. And we got the guy to illustrate it. And he came up with this story about this couple in their kitchen wearing some kind of VR headset. Again, VR didn't exist. And we wrote a graphic novel and we handed it out, I kid you not, to the C-suite at Lowe's. And it's something we've done a lot over the years where we've created graphic novels and literally handed them to leaders of these Fortune 100 companies. And they read the graphic novel, they read the comic book, and now they understand. Now science fiction has created new visions and new belief systems in their mind about how to use technology. In this case, it was VR. We actually used AR in the end, but the stories were VR. And now they understand what they need to do to be innovative. So the client was as crazy as me, and he said, "We're going to build a holodeck. Let's do it." I couldn't believe it, that we had the money to build a holodeck. I couldn't believe it. It was like my dream come true. So we went out and we spoke to the latest and greatest inventors at the time, working in the space that Joe and Trish are working. And we found somebody who was crazy enough to build it. And we ended up building what we called the Lowe's Holo Room. And you could look it up. And it was basically a prototype, a proof of concept, where you stand in a big AR space using a tablet. You design the specifications of your kitchen or bathroom. It then renders in AR. And then you could walk around and literally get a feel for what your renovation is. So that came out of sci-fi. It was literally, I think, one of the first commercial cases of science fiction, imagination, creating a vision, doing technology to figure out what it is, implementing it. Fast forward to today, or last year, and Lowe's have continued to work in innovative areas, and they've come up with a create your dream kitchen visualization where you use the, I think it's the Vision Quest Pro, and you can actually create your own, almost exactly what we imagined 10 years before. So when I saw this image and I went back to the original art, I was like, wow, that's amazing. So that's one example of the work that we do. I'll talk more about other examples. There's lots of them, and take your questions, but that's a good example.
Yeah, well, it really gets to the heart of science fiction is prototyping, right? We hear these things in popular culture, and they start to echo around, and especially things that many years ago as science fiction, it was just wild blue sky dreams, right? And we see a lot of that in fantasy fiction now today. But now that they're popular, right, we want to see the magic wands work. We want to see the things that we heard about and we saw in media like actually work in reality, and that it becomes that the transition in thought, right, is really around that science fiction is prototyping, that it is things. So staying on the Star Trek theme, the next one. We worked together a little bit to use virtual reality to actually turn VR into a spaceship. And I think part of the idea of using these tools and time traveling, we're going to get to the quantum stuff, and that, don't worry. But is first believing you can, right? That a holodeck can exist, and finding somebody crazy enough to build one, and sure enough, the future is today. It's not Star Trek. We didn't have to wait 200 years. We got it now. So, like, what was it like to convince a room in the middle of a pandemic to use these devices to travel to space together?
Yeah, I think, big businesses, big companies, and this is why we're here today. Big companies need innovation. What's made them successful in the past is not going to make them successful in the future. So they understand that. The biggest problem that they have is they can't get out of their own way because they're so used to doing the same thing over. They can't innovate. And I would say even Apple today is struggling to become innovative. I think it's lost its edge because they just get big. They get so comfortable. So they understand they need it. So this approach is crazy enough. They've tried everything, and they keep producing, if it's the case of Coca-Cola, different flavored water, or other kinds. They just can't come up with a big breakthrough. So what our process does is it allows them to look at the emerging technologies, look at the convergence of where technologies are going and society is going, and then imagine and tell stories about how they'll be serving their customers in 3 to 5 years. Then work backwards from there to what they need to do today. So we call it future back. And it's now become an ingrained process at Coca-Cola. We help them do it, and now they do it as part of their innovation process. So what you need to do to convince clients is the way you've been doing things isn't going to get you where you need to be. Arguably, you need to be more visionary and more experimental now than you've ever been. We can barely keep up, frankly, with AI, and we'll talk more about AI later. But you've got to take these risks. How do you move a mountain? How do you move an oil tanker? You move them by creating a shared vision and story of what the future is. So great leaders and great companies are able to say, this is where we're going to be. We're going to get people on Mars. We're going to have so people, you need to create that shared narrative of a transformative future, a visionary future. And you need to get everyone to believe that. How do you do that? Through telling stories. Has anyone read *Sapiens* by Yuval Harari? Right. So he talks a lot about stories, right? And the power of narrative as a shared construct of society. So he talks like money is a shared, like money, paper doesn't have any value. It has value because we have a shared belief it has value. So what we're trying to do with these stories in these large organizations is to create a shared concept of what the future is for the organization. Now, it's much easier to get an oil tanker to move because everyone, all the tens of thousands of people who work in that large culture have a shared story. What often happens in big organizations is they'll get the management consultants in and they'll PowerPoint them or they'll try and convince them with mostly, let's call it intellectual persuasion. But that doesn't really move people. We need to capture their hearts. Just like science fiction captured my heart as a child, as a teenager, and I'm sure you, when you're really in that world, you need to capture their imagination, capture their heart, feel it viscerally. And that's why I'm so excited to be working with the MAVERiC studio, because these are the visceral tools that they're using, cutting edge visceral tools to capture. Do you want me to talk to this example?
No, I want to. There's a setup.
Okay, good.
There's a whole thing.
Okay.
There's a bit.
And by the way, shut me up because I can talk forever.
Oh no! Well,
Okay.
the people got to know who you are,
Okay.
and then we can get into a conversation, right?
Okay.
I had my space, but I think this is where we're starting to cross over more and more, right? And I think the project behind me speaks to it. The people who are in here know some of my work is AI influenced right now, and especially AI agents. Coming from video games, this isn't scary to me because I've been programming AI agents my entire life to be the elf or the dragon or the zombie that I showed you before, right? But going back to that Star Trek example, and us increasingly more and more in our time at CES together, which we'll get into, is AI agents everywhere. That doctor that we saw 20, 30 years ago on Star Trek is like, you just built one, didn't you?
Yeah, digital nurse. Yeah. So this was a great project. Does anyone know HCA Healthcare? Yeah, biggest hospital in North America. I think they have over 180 hospitals. They're going through rapid transformation. And they have a division within the organization that reports into the CEO is all about transformation. And they were like, help. Like, we've got to change our hospitals. Especially with health tech, there's so much opportunity, help. So they gave us their research, just like Lowe's did. And we said, you guys need a future magazine. So what we did for them, it wasn't a graphic novel, it wasn't a video, it was a magazine of HCA's future set 10 years' time. And in this magazine, it was basically a homage to the success of their transformation. So why are the magazines cool? Because you could do future ads, you could do future timelines, imaginary interviews. And one of the pieces of content in this magazine, this is the actual magazine, was this AI nurse, and her name is Katie. And she was able to help nurses with their scheduling, with patient notes, essentially a lot of the frictions that nurses have. And when we did research, we went to the hospitals, we spoke to nurses, we figured out they do a lot. And a lot of that is just crappy paperwork. So what Katie does is she takes care of all of that. So in the magazine, we basically had a fictional interview with this digital nurse, and we really brought her to life. And so we were in a meeting, we were going through the magazine, and they just hired somebody from Disney, CTO from Disney. And he read the magazine, and this was one of my career highs. This was just a lovely moment. He read the magazine, and he read about Katie, and he goes, I'm going to build this. Literally. So it went straight from imagination, storytelling, visioning, and he built Katie. And if you go to the next slide, they actually launched it with Google. They went to Google, they built it, and now Katie's up and running in some hospitals. And just, again, just the power of using vision, using imagination, using story to create, and that cycle wasn't 10 years like Lo. That cycle was like a few months.
Right, I think that's the walking through it all, and now you are all caught up on the timeline because we're up to 2024. Right, and kind of caught up to projects and where the technology is at. So like when we're talking about next, dipping into the future, because we all just went to the past together, it's really about, one, we know we can visualize it, we can do it, but increasingly, the haptics on Lowe's, we can touch this, right? These things that are currently media, they are more and more real all of the time. So it really starts to open up that question of, what is the past, what is the future, where are we now in that, how much of it really looks. And when the AI agents are joining us as storytellers, and the majority of my work in the last 10 years has been around world building, has been about how there's no longer the singular storyteller, right? We're all starting to tell collective stories. Can you go to, there we go. And so we talked a lot about some of who plays this game or has played this game or is familiar with the Pokemon brand. Right. So there's these little creatures, AIs, that are populating the world all around us. And right now, in between you and me and just out there, they're running around. They're doing stuff. You can fight with them. You can do things. And you were trying to convince people of this a while ago, but it's here.
Yeah.
And this was kind of one of the big transformative moments we saw for the future portion of CES and what was next.
Yeah.
What did you take from what you saw, from what we saw, and what we're about to see together?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot in Pokemon Go. I think one of the things that by doing science fiction visioning and prototyping, is when you do it like every single day like we do, you're going to invent things inevitably, and then they're going to happen. So if I had $1 for every company vision, sci-fi type of business or product, I'd be happy man. So eventually see it. But for Pokemon Go, we were chatting about this the other day. It was like, one day people are going to be so immersed in a game with AR that they're going to be running around and using a process. You could tell they're going to be trespassing because there's a Pikachu that they just got to get like right over the fence. They're going to fall down manholes because they're so distracted in the virtual augmented world. They might be a lot healthier because they're running around a bit more and sure enough, that's exactly what happened. When Pokemon Go, people were trespassing, people did fall in manholes, and people did, exercise and get their steps up. So what we've learned from Pokemon Go, at least, it's a good example of science fiction prototyping as a tool to rehearse the future, to anticipate the intended and unintended consequences that new technologies like AR games do. And so right now, today, we need to do a lot more of that, right?
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, Pokemon Go is a really classic case that Trisha
Yeah.
and I reference to a lot.
Yeah.
Especially because it's actually San Diego is home to a terrible tragedy because of this game.
Oh.
A couple of people walked off Sunset Cliffs to their death
Oh, shit.
chasing Pokemon.
For real? Damn.
I know it's kind of one of those kind of hilarious tragedies, but tragedy nonetheless. But so like, I don't think anybody that made this game were like, damn, people gonna chase
Yeah.
Pikachu off a cliff.
Yeah.
Oops. You know, and right now with AI storytellers, new tools, new visualizations,
Yeah.
like we are enabling this sort of thing. So can you bring up Pantheon? This is my last bit of like science fiction. Now I want to open it up a bit. So does anybody see this series ever? No. Some people did because we put it on in the studio. Strongly suggest picking this one up. This one came to mind because of between our practices, right? And where we're at in the moment of where we're looking for science fiction, right? The storylines and themes in this one start off in video games and technology and virtual reality and end off in quantum time travel and transhumanism. And really that's the frontier we're talking about here, and that's why we brought everybody here, right? Is to say that, no, really, this stuff, those little glasses now, I mean, they were that a year ago. Those are all a year old, and now all of them are smaller, better, faster, are really enabling us to see these things, to experience these things, to talk to our quantum selves. So where are you finding science fiction these days yourself? And then we'll go on a hunt out here.
Yeah, I mean, well, I just want to say, I think this AR future, I don't think anyone's ready for it. And I think they need to get ready for it now. I think these devices are becoming incredible. Actually, just before I came here, I was doing a research project looking at all the different AR headsets and they're amazing, and they're only going to get a lot better. I also think earbuds and earbud technology as well, but that's another story. But we are definitely going to be running around with augmented reality glasses. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. What's that future going to be like? We can tell you. We know. We can jump in our time machine. We can write stories about ubiquitous AR on our glasses, and we can see exactly what's going to happen. In fact, I just read there's a great writer. His name's Adam MAVERiC. You need to look him up. He's a fantastic sci-fi writer. He writes for us. He wrote a story. It's a sad story, but he wrote a story where AR glasses are ubiquitous. And essentially, it's about this couple. Apologies if this is a bit triggering, but they lost their child. But they can't get over grieving their child because they use AR superimposed in their home. So the child's always there, and they interact with the child. It's an AR child, but they use their glasses all the time. So it's just an interesting dystopian kind of point of view on AR, ubiquitous AR. And I think it will get to that. It's not if, it's when. So for me, wearing my commercial hat, I'm trying to say to my clients, Coca-Cola, whoever, this is coming, you need to be ready. Let's do some science fiction prototyping and figure out how you can thrive in this world and what the traps are, because there will be traps.
Yeah,
Anyway,
our own, a lot of what we're doing now and how MAVERiC came about was directly from a story that was passed on to us, a short story called The Turnaround. Charlie's last name, Charlie Anders. Sorry, author, I will post it in the comments. But a beautiful story, but it's about ubiquitous AR. And in the middle of the pandemic, which is when I picked this up, it was refreshing to think of taking a set of AR glasses and walking through Golden Gate Park in the heyday of the 60s. It was, and then flip to 80 years into the future when green tech was there. That even the power of suggestion through in-depth and immersive media was powerful enough to put us there, right? And especially when you put more than one person in the same space together, like it doesn't matter if the future or past is simulated. If there is more than one human there together, then culture is happening, right? And that makes people go. So, but we've talked enough. What do you guys think? Where is time travel and where is science fiction happening for you?
I've got the mic if anyone wants to. Yeah.
Oh.
Hi, everyone. I'm Sina. We just started with the MAVERiC studio. So I'm seeing the vision, because they're already achieving the eyewear, like Holiday Global, Luminous, and also the FDA-approved SLRs that were just passed a few days ago. Have you considered these technologies ubiquitously working with smart contact lenses?
Yeah, I saw smart contact lenses a couple of years ago at CES, 2 or 3 years ago, and they looked pretty cool. I still think we're away from that, but we'll get there. I mean, Moore's law is still alive and well. Sensors are getting smaller and smaller. I think let's get really good AR glasses first, and then I think the contact lens paradigm will happen. Eventually, it'll happen. It's profound. When we can't distinguish between physical reality and augmented reality, it's a profound transformation in our world. Arguably, I'd say it's better, because right now we're all looking in our phones all the time. This is kind of the paradigm, which sucks. So maybe having heads up is a lot better, but it's going to change a lot. Like, what does it do for like real estate? You know, for furnishing your rooms, for, you know, there's some provocative social protests that were done in the early days of AR where you can block out homeless people on the street, you know, that kind of thing. So, any other questions?
We got a roaming microphone now. Don't be shy. For them. We didn't see too much for contacts on the floor. I know most of that's still in development around here, but like especially augmented vision. But you had a kind of hinted at augmented audio. And I think it's like, that's kind of an underplayed area right now too. Is like piping things directly into your head via your glasses is a pretty powerful tool.
Hello, my name is Sharana. I'm also a part of MAVERiC Studio. I think for me, in terms of what I've seen, there's a lot of separate, like you step into a virtual world and you're completely separate from actual reality. There's also augmented reality, which adds onto your reality. But then there's also mixed reality. So I think the issue with Pokemon Go might have been like people were walking into traffic. It was crazy. And it's because there wasn't like a connection between actual reality and that augmented reality. So when you're thinking about like these time travel and these crazy worlds, do we want a completely separate, I'm using reality so much, do we want a completely separate reality from the world, or do we want a mixed version of it?
It's a great question. I mean, I think it's one that you guys should answer, frankly, because you're the ones building it. You know, you're the ones that are creating these futures. My bias is generally towards, let's try and make ourselves more human, not less human. We are sacrificing a lot of our innate humanity at the expense of these technologies. So we always try, sometimes a bit subversively, to bring the human equation back in so that we keep human connection, we keep community, we keep social connections. So I think that should be our framework for any kind of tech or visioning. Let's not lose the human in it, and our humanity. And we are. Let's not kid ourselves. Like, there's a lot that we need to clean up. But it's a great question. I think it's really, Joe and I were talking about this. What is our responsibility as Imagineers? Do we have an ethical responsibility? Do we have to create visions that, and put out into the world preferred futures that kind of uplift our species? or should we just do anything?
Well, it was interesting on the responsibility question of if and how, and if it's how mixed it is. I think is time immemorial on a level. I mean, I was told to stop reading comic books. You know, like they were too immersive, and I would never read real books. I think for me, the interesting part that plays around with the ethics and why I brought up I Love Bees was the rise of alternate realities that the groups of they're so prolific now and there's so much that like groups of that like the same story, you know, tend to band together. You know, Comic-Con happens down there, and boy howdy are there a lot of Avengers around, you know, like so I'm really interested in the alternate realities that people choose to live in anyway, right? Like people construct their realities, so where does our constructed reality then fit into reality overall? Anyway, other questions?
Hi, I'm Caro. I'm also in MAVERiC. Thank you, Joe, Trisha, and Ari. So there's a lot of uncertainty, right? I would like to know, I don't know, like the top 3 or 5 technologies or ideas, or where are we heading to, like, because every day there's this new that it seems that it is going to change everything. I think some of them, they won't prosper because we still have to think about humans and to be present. So I don't know, what is your opinion about it? Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, that's a good question. It's a big question. I mean, top of the list is AI, and I think personal AI. So I'm working with a startup right now that's doing really interesting work, taking biometric data from different parts of the body. We'll talk about the ear as well, because I think the ear is, like we're saying, is an underappreciated. Did you know that you can measure biometrics? You can tell people's moods through the ear. You can stimulate the vagus nerve, so you can know how they're feeling, stimulate the vagus nerve through the ear. The ear is also a brain control device. So you can actually use your mind to control your phone or control digital world all through the ear. And if you look at science fiction, you look at like Ender's Game, where Jane is the AI, or you look at Samantha from Her, it's all through the ear. So the ear is very powerful. Anyway, I think we're heading to a future where we're going to have personal AI agents. Yeah. Oh, this is really interesting. Do you want to talk about Enchanted Tool?
Yeah, because I think this was a real practical example that we both got a hands-on example with. And this is developed along, and this is I would not call this a robot, I would call it an embodied AI avatar. The company that does this has created this spiritual AI world where these creatures exist to care for each other and now humans. They do so by sharing stories in space with us. And so this unit was built so that the humans could bring this soul to our Earth, and so we could talk with it across the digital divide. That is on their website. Check it out. It's part of their video set. So that was fascinating to me. Like, doesn't matter what you think it is, that's what the company says it is. So is it that?
Yeah, and what I loved about the story too was they're working with children who are going to have with cancer treatment. So this robot is very gentle, very social, very beautiful. It kind of ushers them in and helps them towards their treatment. But then they had to leave, and they were so devastated because they formed a bond that they now have created like an app. So they have another instantiation of MAVERiC in a different form, which is beautiful. Yeah, but your question is a good one. I think it's personal AI agents using our data in an ethical way that know us better than we know ourselves, that can help us make better choices, not nudge tyranny, which is what we have today, where we're nudged tyrannically based on what the algorithm wants us to have or buy or feel, but in a way that supports us and in a transparent way where we own our own data. That's the future I want to see. I think it'll help us. We were talking about this the other day, prepping for this panel, was technology used well can mitigate the worst of our human impulses. We are still fairly unevolved as a species. You just need to look at road rage and people act crazy. You see a stick on the ground, you think it's a snake, even though it's not a snake, and instantly you think it's a snake. We've just evolved that way. So technology used in the right way, which I'm kind of optimistic about, I think can really help us mitigate some of our worst impulses. But of course, there's a fine line. And what is the line? Who knows? We have to figure that out. Sci-fi can help, though.
No, I'll be a representative of your dark timeline this time around. Right, more questions?
Hi, I'm a faculty in psychiatry, and I also do, I co-direct the University of California's Climate Resilience Initiative. So we're very much embedded in what our changing world and our changing climate is impacting human health and also mental health and bringing resilience to populations. So I love technology, AI. We use that in our precision work all the time. And so use of tech for building greater connections, for helping envision a future that's not gloom and doom, that has a positive, optimistic point of view. Also that helps us connect generations is really great, and I applaud you for going into that part of the discussion. My son's here too. He is also into climate activism and actually made his own comic book that's now on Amazon that he created himself all the artwork through the digital resources that he had, and that's why this is a good platform for him to learn more. What I wanted to talk about is also sort of like the reality of the discussion that you first had, that when you discuss the technology or the adoption of this technology with big companies, and they're talking, and you're asking them about imagining a future and then future back, and then having them imagine a product that doesn't exist but people will want in the future. And so that's more serving the capitalist needs, which are not really the sustainability-oriented needs. And so I really love the connectionist framework, but not the capitalist framework. And I understand you talked about the fine line, but as the leaders of this technology, what ideas do you have to ensure that it goes that way, is basically what I want to ask about.
This is a lot of crossover work, because I think some of the work that both of us have been asked to do is around future city envisionment. One of your most recent projects, and for Tricia and I are doing a lot of projects across the middle of the country around bringing communities together using virtual reality and some light cosplay to bring the future to you. But yeah, this goes to I think this is a mega project, and beyond capital, it is, from my understanding, something that is intended to transform humanity. How we view the desert ecosystem and so on. Can you talk about that and that?
Yeah, I think you're right. There's a tension between sometimes the capitalist motive and shareholder value and doing what's right for people on the planet. And some of this work is subversive. Some of the stories we write, some of the ideas that we seed are, I would say, transformative in that respect. It's a fine line, though. These are our clients. They're paying us. We generally try and break stereotypical points of view around what the future could and should look like from a dominant paradigm. Our clients sometimes push us to do that more. Oftentimes we kind of push on tech, but we also push on social structures, you know. So we're challenging in that respect to the extent that we can get away with it. We're not an activist company, and we would never be hired again if we cross that line. But we do try. We try and bring a diverse mindset to the visions that we bring as well. And I've had success. You know. Neon was an interesting one. Yeah, I mean, I can't really talk much about this project, sadly, because I'm under NDA. But it was a fascinating project because it was like, imagine you could build a city that serves its people from scratch, and money was no object, and it's 50 years in the future. Go. You know, it was kind of amazing. So that was a fun project. That's all I can really say about that. But what's cool about it is you get to rethink and reimagine everything. So, you know, most of our projects are parts of society: beverages, health, finance. With Neom, it basically was everything. It was pretty cool. It was pretty cool. It was fun project, difficult project, but fun project.
Uh,
Listen up, kids. Our climate is changing. Available now on Amazon. Go check it out. Buy a copy or
Listen up,
10.
kids, our planet is changing.
Spread it around your schoolroom.
It's really great to hear about your listen up, kids, the planet is changing, and your mother. What great question you asked. My question is similar to yours. I think it's really important that we start thinking of the future and inventing the future and creating the future and seeing the future in a peaceful way that is more humane. And how do we bring that to people so that this vision is shared by more people? We need so many people to share this vision, right? So that's my vision that I would love to create. So when you were talking about the magazine that you made for HCA, that like spurred, I thought, wow, okay, let's make a magazine that shows the world how to make peace profitable instead of war. War is very, very profitable. We all know that. How do we make peace profitable? The Department of Defense, massive amounts of money, right? Just an example, these F-35s that fly over campus all the time, the cost of one of those is equivalent to 500 mobile healthcare clinics. I teach global health here. I care about global health. I care about people's health. I care about the fact that many people just in this country in rural areas don't have healthcare. We could have these state-of-the-art mobile healthcare clinics all over our country. Forget about, you know, Afghanistan and, you know, the amount of money that we spent going there. So how can we make this vision, just like that magazine, that it proliferates across the world, and people start to see this vision, everybody starts to see this vision, and maybe wars between nations happen virtually instead of real, and nobody gets hurt.
You know, at that end point there, it kind of reminded me, because we were just in Vegas and this show was around, and it's the biggest light show you can possibly happen, right? And the ticket is largely the planet, right? And taking care of that. And bringing these visions to life, but also the role of simulation. On my side of the world, games and war games are cost-saving and life-saving, because when we do it virtually, we're not actually blowing up people, right? And so there's this role of even a dystopia in finding our utopic future. What have you found in your practice to try to shift, to tilt that to the utopic, or tilt it to the, has worked?
Yeah, I mean, I love your passion behind this, and I think that's an aspiration that we share. I think most people share, frankly. I think what's lacking in the world is that narrative is not clear. That story about what their future is isn't clear. No one's owning it. And there's a doom and gloom narrative that's clearer. So I'm all ears. What I'm excited about is working with Joe and Trish and Greg and the MAVERiC Lab is because we have state-of-the-art tools where we can start to build those futures in really immersive ways, where we can bring people in. I'm going to bring my clients in, where we can co-create that future and play and experiment and rehearse the future. That's what I'm excited about, frankly, and that's why I wanted to be part of this. And let's imagine what that future could look like. And let's get people excited about it. That's frankly my life's work, like what I'm trying to do. With client work, it's tricky, because they're running a business and they want innovation, but we do see these ideas. We're constantly stretching them and pushing them towards it. But I love your passion, and I think even around climate, like I was talking to Paul Robin, the Vice Chancellor, a few weeks ago, and he was saying that's a passion area of his. And he was saying how climate change, people just don't get it. So how do we help them get it using these tools? And I think we could. We have folks from Scripps Oceanography here, like let's show people viscerally what's happening to the oceans, That's exciting. Like that's really, I think, a lot of power there, yeah.
But in some ways, it already has. So one of the more popular science fiction books that's less dystopic and more hopeful is The Ministry for the Future, Kim Stanley Robinson. Writing about, not only does he write about a future that we have to deal with, but also offer solutions. But the role that speculative fiction can play is that book has now been adopted by the United Nations, where they've now created a ministry for the future based on the blueprints or what he lays out in the book. So sometimes these books inspire people to action, and they actually set out a plan. And now the EU is looking also to see how that same plan can be implemented. So at times it is inspiring and put into action.
I think there's a role in artifacting too, like the magazine, right? And the powerful thing it is to leave a magazine around and for somebody to find that artifact of the future. And we talk about this a lot in set and on the entertainment side, the power of an artifact to bring a world to life. Like you suddenly put, if you put an actor into a blank room, they have a hard time getting there. But the moment you put them in a set and put that sword in their hand, wow, is that real? And boy, that dragon is one step closer to their imagination. And when we talk about these things being tools of the imagination, right, that something as simple as writing it down and drawing it in front of you is the first step, in making that imagination, that piece real, that product real, that desire to see the future realized, real in front of you too. Do we need to take a break for the MAVERiCs? We have another question yet. Yes, before you guys have to actually go build the universe.
Hi, I'm Charles. I'm also in the MAVERiC studio. I was just wondering, are there any stories or prototypes that resonated universally across different clients or industries?
What was the question?
Are there any stories or prototypes that resonate across clients in my work? I think so. I think, it's a bit chicken and the egg. It's like we kind of come up with the visions, they buy into them, they give us feedback, we refine them. So it's a collaborative process. And in some ways, we are nudging them with the work that we come up. Most of the stories that we write, and we do write a lot of stories, have beneficial outcomes for our clients and for their stakeholders. Most of the time, it's an aspirational vision. I think that's the common, like we never really want to bum our clients out. The only time we write more dystopian futures is when we're working like with NATO, where it's branches of the military, and if they get it wrong, it's bad. So we've got to have more dystopian scenarios there. But I think I think generally speaking, our narratives are positive. Sometimes clients will say to us, we want dystopian too, because we want to really shock people, and sometimes we do that. But no, every brief is different. Each project's different. I will say though, that AI though, like the way we incorporate AI and of how AI interacts with our clients is fairly consistent, and that has been for a long time. And that's why for me, is working in the space as a futurist, just the last couple of years have just been bonkers, because like we've been talking about this, writing these stories for 6, 7, 8 years, and then overnight, like it's just quickly caught up, and it's surprised every day is just crazy. But I think AI, probably in the way AI has been woven into our lives, I think that's probably the most common one. Yeah.
Wait, then you can go. Okay. So I come at this from a slightly different angle, because more hero's journey sort of stuff. But I would say that lately that's been distilled down to, instead of even dystopia, utopia, or any of that, or hero or not, that there will be tragedy and there will be recovery. Just there will be tragedy somewhere or some past, and then you recover from it. And then that's a universalism that resonates. Okay, now.
If you could build a future world 5 to 10 years in the future that gets people really inspired and excited about how we're relating to each other and what's happening in that world, what would you do? What elements would you have in there? That's my question to you.
That's what she does.
I think I would. Oh, I'm Kabir, Maverick. I think I would try to the way how medicine is growing in the personalized medicine field. I really see that expanding, but I do see how a lot of times, especially with clinical trials, with how some stuff relating to that medicine is going, they're kind of trying to reinvent the wheel and ignoring indigenous practices, especially like in the psychedelic field. And I think creating a future with more integrative and interdisciplinary informed information is necessary.
Love it. We need to chat. That's great. Thank you.
My name's Sharana. Yep, back again. I think I'd build a sandbox. Like, can I throw like a boulder in the air? What would happen? I can't do that now. I don't have the strength for that. But anything, can I run as many crazy experiments with a mixed reality or augmented reality headset that would let me just do as many crazy things and run as many crazy ideas? Because I think there's like a big policy in entrepreneurship that's like fail as much as you can, fail as fast as you can. So is there a way that we can speed up that process so we can actually have more successful entrepreneurs?
Yeah, so you guys know my agenda, but basically I would like, to have a more connected world where we can really be able to use all of our senses in that connected world. So right now it's mostly visual and audio, but if you can smell, taste, touch as well, then you can create environments where you probably don't need to physically travel, and that reduces the carbon footprint of the planet, which is awesome. I'd also like to create a world where we can immediately see the consequences of our actions and choose the right decision, such as simple things we do, such as food waste, what happens to that and how that creates a greater carbon footprint, and what the alternative is. And does that help us generate better real life decisions. And I think that's really powerful in, for sustainability solutions.
Piggyback on what you're saying, I think it would be really fun to see how your choices, immediately what your choice, what the outcome is. Now, if you make a different choice and you spend these resources, in this way, what's the outcome? And if in this way, what's the outcome? And so that we can start seeing, so people can envision, like it's so explicitly clear that the choices that we make change our world. And people are not realizing that the votes that they make, the choices that they make on a daily basis change our world. So if you could see that like right away and see all these avenues, right? And start to, feel what equity might look like, right? Yeah.
So if I can clarify your question, is how do we envision a better future for ourselves and the world in 10 years?
Yeah, and if we could build that, what would we have in that world?
Thank you. I think about this. I try to live my life as close as possible to the blue zone philosophy. I love the blue zone concept and initiatives. So I'd like to think that we can improve our society by looking at successes from the past. And if we could take that and modernize it, for example, the city of Singapore is using a lot of blue zone initiatives to improve their city for a very nice community. So that's my thought.
So there's a lot that different generations have to offer, and perhaps the choices that we make now can place us into certain health outcomes. So there's a lot of wisdom that is to be learned, especially for youngers, but also the elders like to be around younger, as they have nothing to do. So I think there's a lot of sharing of knowledge that can benefit us what we're doing now, so we don't end up unhealthy.
Yeah, let's not use our generational wisdom or wisdom of the past either. Let's pull that into the future rather than trying to reinvent it all again, right? Which is great. Yeah.
Well, I'm losing my time travel technician and many of our world builders. So thank you, MAVERiCs, for coming tonight. We're around here for a little bit longer for some Q&A. I know you guys have to go. Are we off stream soon? Okay. Well, tell the streamer, tell Doug that we can stop the stream now, Doug. But thank you all for coming tonight. Greg, do you have any final words before anything as well?
Want to learn more? Get involved. Let's be the start of a conversation. We have lots of different varieties of events we do. Go to innovation.ucsd.edu. Also check out the DIB's website. Liesl, anything particular?
Okay.